Welcome to Tree Talk, episode 143. Myself, Jack Neville, and Matt O'Callaghan of the Weekly Observer and Vale Star. It's a busy weekend for us, Matt. There's so much to look forward to and so much to look back on. We have Munster Hurling in the Munster Hurling semi-final, Limerick and Cork. We have a Munster Camogie final. We have an All-Ireland minor semi-final. We have to look back on the Limerick footballers last weekend. We had the draw then for the club championships, so do stay tuned for that.
The impression again we get out with what you put into it's like a walk of life. If you're good enough, go out and get it, no more about it.
But not so much control in the centre of the field from Kilkenny as Richie Bennett sends it high and over the bar.
Your mother sends you down to the shop for a pound's worth of goods and she gives you 50 pence. You can't get the pound's worth of goods, can you?
Just about kept in. Oh, well, Johnny Buckley. To do that to Tommaso Shea, he deserves to score from here. One of the highlights of the Sunday game.
Limerick went out there from the word go today. No more about it. They made all the running, that was it. Put the ball over the bar and the back of it, and that's it. No ifs, no buts.
Is there much time left? We have a couple of injuries. Here comes Kieran Curry. Curry leading the charge of the right brigade. 45 metres out. There's a chance to score. He's put it high. He's put it over.
There's no sympathy in this game for anybody.
It's Munster Hurling Championship weekend, Matt, and there's probably nowhere else you could really start. And it's Limerick and Cork in Semple Stadium at 7 o'clock on Saturday evening. There'll be 2,500 people there, which will be a boost. It's not enough, but we won't get into that. But Limerick and Cork, Matt, what is it about them two teams when they play in the Munster Championship or even in the All-Ireland series?
Well, I suppose recent game or recent clashes between the counties, Jack, would immediately conjure up ideas and thoughts of another humdinger, because there have been so many great games between Cork and Limerick in the last number of years. If you go back to 2018 and that incredible draw down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, the following year, then you had or later that year, of course, you had that dramatic All-Ireland semi-final. Fast forward to 2019. And you had that game in Limerick when Cork came to Limerick and defeated Limerick in the Munster Championship. So it's a derby in many ways in the sense that form tends to go out the window a bit, and it's very, very hard to predict the result. Now Cork overall have had generally the upper hand, but certainly in recent meetings between the counties, like, there has been absolutely nothing about it in it. But one thing about all the games, Jack, has been the quality of the hurling in games between Cork and Limerick. You know, they serve up classic hurling contests. We have to go all the way back, actually, I think, to 2010 for the last time in which they met at this stage of the competition, which is quite some time ago. And on that occasion, Cork were comfortable winners in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. So look, Jack, it has all the ingredients again of a cracker, and like the build up to it in many ways. You got that league meeting about 3 or 4 weeks ago when Cork came to Limerick with what was perceived as a weakened side, and I've no doubt that will turn out to be the case, because you'll have 5 or 6, 7 maybe frontline players that were absent on that evening for either all or part of the game, that will be likely to be starting for Cork on Saturday evening. And like, what happened in that game will have absolutely no bearing whatsoever on what's going to transpire between the White Lions at 7 o'clock on Saturday in Thurles.
And it's interesting you mentioned the teams that are Matt. We're going to be, and we've been very bad at predicting teams so far. But how close do you think we'll be to Limerick's All-Ireland winning side from last December?
I think at the end of the day, Jack, with all the chopping and changing and the giving fellas a chance, this, that, and the other thing, I think it will be as near to the starting 15 in the All-Ireland final as doesn't matter. Now, John Kiely has a couple of big calls to make. Richie English came back, showed no ill effects physically, not hurling wise, from his layoff. He certainly will give some headaches in selecting the full back line. Graham Mulcahy had very limited exposure during the league because of injury, but did play the full game in Mullingar, which was getting good game time under his belt. So apart from those two positions, maybe as well that John Kiely will look at the midfield situation. What pairing will he go with at midfield? Is there an argument again that we could see Kyle Hayes return to the attack, in which case we may see Richie English slotting in at left full, Barry Nash going out to the wing? Will Peter Casey get the nod ahead of Graham Mulcahy? But apart from that, I think they're the only ponderables. That will it or won't it? I think the team will be very, very much on the lines, as near as doesn't really matter to the side that started against Waterford in the All-Ireland final.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with you there. I think, as you mentioned, Rich English and potentially Peter Casey are the two that could break into it. And then on a Cork side, and you mentioned it there when you were talking about that league game, who do you expect to come back in?
Well, how long have you? I expect Sean O'Donoghue to come back in, possibly in the full back line. Now, Timmy O'Mahony is a conundrum for Kieran Kingston and his backroom team. He has played in a number of positions and played successfully in them all. And where do they get the best out of him? I would be a big fan of the guy. I think he's a very, very good hurler. I certainly think he will start. And the big question for Cork is, where do they start him that he makes the greatest impact? Now, there is no doubt whatsoever Dara Fitzgibbon is going to come back into the side, and we know what he brings. You're definitely going to see Seamus Hannity back in the side. I think there's a case that you'll see Alan Cadigan back in the side, and definitely Patrick Horgan and Luke Meade will be in from the start. So I think it'll be a familiar-looking Cork team enough now. The only those that will be looking for first-team places, I think Jack O'Connor has done enough during the league campaign to warrant inclusion from the start. I think Alan Connolly certainly put up his hand. Now he was used sparingly, which was surprising, because he was a man that lit up the Cork Championship last year in helping Blackrock to win the Cork Senior Hurling Championship. And in his limited enough exposure during the league this year, he has scored 4 goals. And of course, that's another issue. Like Cork's propensity to be able to score goals is a huge threat. They have scored 18 goals in the 5 matches in the league now. All right, you could say 7 of them were against Westmeath, but they got 3 against Galway, or 2 against Galway, a couple against Tipperary, a couple against Limerick. They got 5 against Waterford. They've been very, very, very prolific when it comes to goal scoring. Another man, but getting back to the nub of your question, another man that may be in line to start for Cork would be Niall Cashman at wing back. Had a pretty successful league campaign, and after that, I suppose there will be cases for Dara Conray, possibly Robert Downey. There'll be cases, and of course, you have the family squabble for the number 1 jersey to take over from Anthony Nash between Jaron and Patrick Collins, the brothers from Ballinhassig. So I think Cork will be on pretty expected lines. Owen Cadigan, of course, will be knocking at the door for inclusion as well. Well, whether he can dislodge Damien Cahalan from fullback, that's another question.
Yeah, they've serious firepower all over the field, and I suppose this game will be played at the start of July, whereas last year in the winter championship, Cork didn't seem to fire. Do you go along with that narrative that the hard ground and the good weather suits a team like Cork?
I normally don't. But I suppose there is some grain of truth in it. That they love the top of the ground, and they certainly love Thurles. We've seen that down through the years to our costs on many occasions. Cork absolutely love playing in Thurles. So yeah, it's going to be a totally different Cork team than we saw in the Gaelic grounds. Like they want, Jack. They want to get rid of an unwanted record that they have in Cork of not having won an All-Ireland since way back in 2005, which is in Cork hurling terms is an absolute lifetime. And they will want to, not that they will be focusing on that unwanted record, but they will want to get rid of that. And like it's always said about Kerry football that Kerry football was all about September and Sam Maguire before the All-Irelands were moved. An awful lot of the Cork narrative over the years has been September and the Lee McCarthy. It is the one competition and the one trophy more than anything Cork GA covered.
Yeah, and you spoke there at the start there about the league game not having much bearing. I do go along those lines that it will be out of the Cork system. But one thing that was very obvious that day was Keane Lynch and Mark Coleman. And Mark Coleman was having a storm in league until he came up against Keane Lynch. If they're faced that conundrum again, do you fancy Coleman to mark him? Or do you think Cork will assign someone to Mark Lynch if he's at 11?
Yeah, finding somebody to mark Keane Lynch is something that has escaped the best of coaches since he came on the senior stage. So you're into miracle territory if you're going to find somebody that's going to do that, I think, Jack.
And I suppose lastly, Matt, because we don't want to dwell too much in the game because we have so much, like where will the game be won and lost? And you think Limerick will get into a third successive Munster final?
Well, I think it at both ends, Jack, and that's not being facetious now or being smart. And I'll tell you why. It will depend on Limerick's ability to prevent Cork getting goals. And at the other end, it will depend on Limerick's ability to get goals. Goals for Limerick have been very, very scarce. Apart from the Westmeath game, they have been very, very scarce in the league campaign to date. And all right, you can say Limerick are happy to keep slotting over. But in the cut and thrust of championship, Jack, you need goals. And it will depend on Limerick's ability to unhinge that Cork defence. Now, Cork defence, like for the last number of years, has been the Achilles heel of the Cork team. Make no mistake about it. But not so much this year. They're going a long way towards rectifying that. But it will depend on Limerick's ability. And I know this might sound, smart or whatever, on their ability to curve Cork's goal-scoring threat at one end and to pose a threat in the goal-scoring stakes at the other.
I mean, if I had to push you for a name, I'm going to keep pushing here now, Matt. It's Munster Hurling Championship. You don't get away with that.
I'm going for Limerick.
Okay, and I'll agree with you there. And just briefly yeah, no, and I think Cork have kind of proved like a bogey team to Limerick in recent years. Even 2019, after Limerick won All Ireland, I just felt Cork had their number and they did in the Gaelic grounds. But look, it's the first time they've met in a long time, and the Cork team has definitely changed a lot. But regardless, one of them teams, it'll be either Cork or Limerick in the final, and they'll face either Clare or Tipperary. Just on the Clare-Tipperary game, Matt, you obviously saw Clare last weekend, which they beat the favourites, Waterford. There's no doubting that. Do you think Clare can do it again and beat the favourites, which will be Tipperary this weekend, or do you think Tip will get into a Munster final?
I expected Clare to win last week, Jack. Last Sunday. I fancied them to beat Waterford from what I saw of Waterford in Walsh Park. No, I don't think they'll beat Tipperary. A lot of people are saying like that it's Limerick and Galway are the two standout teams. I would say beware of Tipperary.
Yeah, I think I'd be wary of every team at this early doors. We saw last year Waterford kind of came out of the blue. Clare could easier this year or Tipperary, but it's a huge weekend of Munster hurling action. The two semi-finals and the final fortnight afterwards. I suppose moving on from the senior game, and we'll go to Friday evening, and we have the minors back in action. And after such a lengthy delay, like I think you'll have people that'll forget the incredible triumph in December when they beat Tipperary after extra time to secure a back-to-back of Munster titles. They play the experts, as Dear Mullins described them, Galway in the All-Ireland semi-final. I suppose, what are you expecting from the game, Matt, considering Limerick on a normal year would have come into the semi-final with a few games under their belt, and Galway would have come in from the cold, whereas both teams now are really coming from the cold. Can you give us an insight in the game like this, or could it go anywhere really?
For the reasons you said, I don't know what you expect, Jack. That is the thing. But what I do know is that had the game been played when it should have been played, or when it was scheduled to have been played, which would have been the early days of January of this year, certainly Limerick would have gone into it with momentum, because you beat Cork and you beat Tipperary in the Munster Championship, and you win the Munster Championship in doing so. That is as near as you get to winning the perfect Munster Championship, because they're Munster's big two. And Limerick would have had that confidence, they would have had that momentum going into the game against the Galway side, who have yet to feature in the competition. And but that's a debate for another day as to why we should have that situation. But certainly it would have handed a certain advantage to Limerick. Now that advantage, because of the long time lag of 6 months, over 6 months actually, it's a level playing field again. It's like Limerick starting all over again. And of course, back then, like, they didn't have the distraction in the lead up to what would have been the semi-final back then, of they're having to juggle with exams and all that sort of thing, which students have been doing for the last month, which has made it very, very difficult for the students. It has been equally difficult for Dermot Mullins and his management team, because as he told you during the week, Jack, he has accepted the Limerick under-20 job for 2021. And now he's trying to balance between finishing off his term with the 2020 minors and focusing on the 2021 under-20 championship, which is coming straight at him at the moment. So it has created all sorts of problems for Limerick. And now Galway will have the same problems with regard to the preparation of players. But they certainly won't have the same problem. Manager Brian Hanley and his team won't have the same problem in trying to focus on two squads. But Galway are going for 4 in a row. They're going to have 10 of last year, starting 15. I understand on the team this year. They've become the masters of the minor championship, and of course, it's another debate like that they're not succeeding in translating that into the success at senior level, or anything like near the same level of success at senior level, or indeed, for that matter, they're not translating it as much as you would expect to under-20 level, because you must remember that they were beaten in last week's Leinster final by Dublin. So I think the odds are stacked against Limerick. I think the odds very, very much favor Galway, but Limerick were written off. I remember going into Thurles for the game against Cork, and I was talking to some connections there, and they didn't hold out much hope of beating Cork. they did it. Likewise, Tipperary, it took them extra time, and we see that this is a team that has endless character and confidence in their own ability, and like they have 7 in the squad that are facing into a second All-Ireland semi-final, and that experience will help them. They had been in the semi-final in 2019, you'll recall, when they lost to Kilkenny, and there's 7 of those players still available and still around for Friday's semi-final. I'm going for Galway, but how much I would love if Limerick could upset the odds, Jack. I'd be a happy man going to Thurles on Saturday. I think it's going to be difficult. Going to be very, very difficult, but I cannot let the green mist, deny reality here on this one. So, look, the odds favour Galway, but probably the 2 games in the championship, even at this remove 6 months on, maybe of some benefit to Limerick. And before the ball was poked in the minor championship this year, Jack, everybody was talking that you would speak to about minor hurling, about the quality of this Galway side this year. So we will see that played out in Thurles, in Ennis on Friday evening.
Yeah, before we digress away from the minor game, just on you're comparing Galway, who are going for 4 in a row, and Limerick, who haven't won a minor title since 1984. And when you consider the recent All-Ireland success of both teams, where's it gone wrong for Limerick in regards to just getting over the line? I know they've been to a couple of finals in the last decade, but that's 37 years at this stage now.
If I knew that, Jack, I'd probably be in Dermot Mullins' job or be taken over from him instead of Kevin O'Hagan. I don't honestly know, but I know prior to the establishment of the academy, there were very prolonged dark days in Limerick on underage hurling, but that has all changed now. And like in the last 10 years, like we've picked up 4 Munster Championship, 2 back-to-backs contested. Was it 7 finals? I think that we're making measurable progress. The next progress, of course, is to get over the semi-final hump, get into a final, and of course win a final.
Yeah, and for those that wouldn't have seen this minor team play in December, what can they expect, obviously, for a game that's shown live on TG4 at 7:30 on Friday evening? It's great exposure for them young lads, but who are the ones to watch, in your opinion? I know it's not nice to name lads that age, but there are some real stars in this Limerick team.
Yeah, there are. What people can expect to see is a very, very gutsy performance, because they have that in spades. Thomas Lynch has been absolutely very, very good between the sticks. Ronan Lyons has had a fantastic couple of games. He's one of the survivors from last year. Ethan Hurley is certainly one to watch at centre half back, the young lad from Newcastle West. Of course, we've Adam English, and we saw what Adam English brought to the table. He's the team captain. We saw what he brought to the table against Cork in the run up to half time with those brace of smashing goals, and he carried it on then in the Munster final. So. And of course, there's Patrick Donovan from Effin, who was a member of the team last year, and is a prolific scorer. But the amount of work that he puts in, he seems to be moving more out around the middle now, even though named in the full forward line. They're just some of the lads that John Kirby from Patrick's well. These are the main guys on the side, but they're mainly Liam Lynch from Mungret. These are guys that played in the semi-final in 2019 and would have that experience. And they're the guys that in normal circumstances, fellas that are underage the following year, that you look to provide the leadership, and they're doing it.
Yeah, I would definitely encourage, as we said last year, to go out and see your local teams. This week's assignment for people watching is to make sure they can tune in on Friday evening and watch the minors play, because as you said, it'll definitely be a gutsy performance, but there's some real classy hurlers there, and I know you said they'll really be up against it against Galway, who are the experts in this competition. But I just have that sneaking suspicion for Limerick. I think Darren Mullins is an excellent manager, and you can hear from Darren Mullins on any of our social channels or on the website. I spoke to him on Monday evening, and there seems to be just a kind of a determined nature kind of under. They're kind of coming in below the radar with the senior on this weekend, and obviously the Camogie on. So do tune in TG Carr against Galway in the All-Ireland semi-final at 7:30. It'll be a first.
Jack,
Hoping for our first minor final since 2016.
Yeah, before you digress from that, I would want to concur 100% with the reference you've made there to Dermot Mullins. Is an excellent coach and absolutely excellent at getting teams prepared, and above all on the day getting the best out of his teams. Like he has a very, very impressive record, not just with Limerick minors, but at club level as well. And I'm sure he's going to bring it to the table at under 20 level. And it is very, very important. And like he will have his homework done in Galway insofar as he can. In that, there's going to be no Galway Championship game to look at, but he certainly will have his homework done as best he can. And it just might be the secret that might unlock Galway.
Yeah, and hopefully for Limerick, the minor final will take place next Saturday, the 10th of July, and hopefully next week we'll be looking forward to that, Matt. But for the time being, we wish Darren Mullins and all the side the best of luck, and to encourage everyone to watch them in action on Friday evening. We actually have a Munster final to look forward to on Saturday afternoon. Limerick versus Cork. Common sense has prevailed. It's on at 3:30 in the Rag, so that they're not clashing with the senior team. You want to give as many of these teams the exposure they deserve. They're training. Everyone is training equally hard. Limerick versus Cork Munster final, a repeat of 2016 and 2017 finals. I suppose before we get on to the final with Cork, the semi-final 13 points to 9 against Waterford wasn't exactly a glamorous win, but in semi-finals, just getting the job done is the main thing.
Yeah, nobody remembers losing semi-finalists. Just to give you a sense of the scale of the task that's facing Limerick on Saturday, and I know they're up for it, and I'll tell you why in a minute, but Limerick are seeking their second ever Munster title. They won it for the first and only time in 2017. And I hope you're sitting on a soft chair, Jack, because Cork are seeking their 62nd title, including 23 in a row from 1978 to 2000. So that is what we're up against in terms of tradition. So I saw both semi-finals. I saw both semi-finals back. I was impressed with the manner in which I had seen Limerick against Clare the previous week, and I genuinely felt that I thought that they could get over Waterford, but that to a certain element it would be a banana skin, because Waterford were smarting from the defeat by Dublin the previous week, which saw them relegated after 6 years in the top flight. And I was genuinely expecting a Waterford backlash. And certainly when I saw the lineup before the game, I was expecting it all the more, because Lorraine Bray, an all-star who hadn't played against Dublin, lined out. So Limerick had to cope with three current all-stars in Lorraine Bray, Niamh Rockett and Beth Carton. But Limerick dug out an excellent victory, Jack. They were a bit slow in starting. They had the breeze to their backs. They fell 3-1 behind. Got a couple of great points just before the first water break, which brought them level. They held Waterford scoreless in the second quarter. But still at 7-3 at half-time, the lead looked tenuous enough. And but in the second half, they really, really dug into it. Really, really, from 1 to 15, really dug into it as if their lives depended on it. Again, the backs like they were the previous week against Clare, were outstanding. Judith Mulcahy had the game of her life at centre back. She was outstanding. And we saw Rebecca DeLee getting back into it, and really showing what she's all about. A couple of those great trade back runs created Waterford all sorts of problems. And I thought we saw a huge performance from Sophie O'Callaghan. A very, very, very effective performance by her, particularly in the second half when Limerick were trying to deprive Waterford, who had the breeze at that stage, of the ball. And of course, Caoimhe Costello was the scorer in chief. It was a very, very hard-won victory, but it was a deserved victory. And from Pat Ryan's point of view, it was the ideal type of game that to get going into a Munster final, because you won the match and you're still somewhat under the radar. Now, Cork had a good win over Tipperary, but it wasn't without they weren't without some shaky moments. Now, Cork got a couple of early goals, and I think it was 2-3 to a point at one stage. But Tipperary had that clawed back to 3 points at half-time. And at one stage, I think Tipperary put over 7 points on the 6 or 7 points on the trot without reply. And at one stage in the second half, the margin was down to a point. Strange to say, Cork got 2 early goals and 2 late goals as well, which probably coloured the thing a bit, and probably distorted it somewhat. But Cork were without a number of players. Orla Cronin did not play, and she's their free taker, and Katrina Mackey took over those duties. And they were also without Hannah Looney, who had played, and Maeve Cahalan, who had played with the footballers the previous evening against Dublin in the league final in Croke Park. But Cork looked impressive, and Amy O'Connor again was outstanding at full forward. She really is on top of her game at the moment. Chloe Sigerson, Aisling Thompson, Laura Tracy, there are big names in there, Jack. It's going to be a very, very interesting final. It's going to be it's a one-off, and it's the fourth final in 5 years between the counties. 2016, Cork won it by 2 points in Kilmallock. 2017, Limerick won it by 2 points in Charleville. So, the omens for a good tight game are certainly there. If you look back, Cork will have to start favourites. They started favourites in 2017 as well, and we see what happened. I'm hopeful. I'm putting Cork as favourites, but I think Limerick will give a very, very good performance.
Yeah, and just on your point there about performance, just talking about performance there, and I was talking to Pat Ryan yesterday, and that interview will be up either tonight or Thursday night. But Pat was kind of saying the time for moral victories is not past, but it's really important that Limerick can get a win after such a good performance against Kilkenny and a good performance against Galway. They face the other one of the big three now in Cork. How important or how big would it be for Limerick or Limerick Camogie if they could actually get over Cork and win a second Munster title in 5 years or 4 years after so long without one?
Yeah, it would be huge, Jack, because the championship is around the corner, and Limerick can really harbour they can harbour realistic ambitions of getting out of their group in the championship. They're grouped with Tipperary, Wexford, and Offaly. And I think there's enough in there for Limerick to be able to come out of that group and get through to a quarter-final at least. So, of course, at the very beginning of the year, speaking to Pat Ryan was saying, if we can get a victory. Now he will have to reappraise the situation, because he has got 3 victories out of 5, and the 2 defeats were to Galway and to Kilkenny, and there's no shame in losing to last year's All-Ireland finalists and this year's league finalists. And the performance against Kilkenny was hugely encouraging. I think Pat Ryan will harbour decent hopes that this might be the opportunity to get one over on Big 3 or Big 4. I would be putting Tipperary into a Big 4 because I think they're right up there. When they were good on Sunday evening, they were very good. But the unfortunate thing was they weren't very good for long enough. They weren't able to maintain it over the hour. The answer to your question is, Jack, it would be huge. It would be a landmark. It would be a milestone.
Yeah, and just on that victory in 2017, for my counting, there's 9 of that team that started against Cork in 17 that started against Waterford last weekend. Like, that is huge, and from experience point of view, because a lot of those players, the likes of Karen O'Leary, Deborah Murphy, Rebecca Lee, would have been very young for that 2017 final. They're more experienced now, and Limerick, a lot of that Limerick team know what it's like to win, even if they've only won one Munster title. They know what it takes to beat Cork and to win a Munster Championship final.
They do, and they have something that the generations before them didn't have. A Munster Senior Camogie medal. And you're right, that experience, they'll bring it to bear. And those players, they've brought their experience, really stepping up to the plate this year. And like, you must remember, you talk about Connolly, you talk about Caoimhe Lyons, you talk about Caoimhe Costello, Rebecca DeLee, and others. These have All-Ireland minor A medals in their lockers. And they did it the hard way. They did it in 2014. They drew in the All-Ireland final with Cork in Kilmallock. And the following week, they went to Charleville and beat them comprehensively. A Cork team that included Amy O'Connor. That was a huge victory. And significantly, Limerick had won the All-Ireland Minor A Championship before Cork won it. It has been in recent years that Cork have made the breakthrough. And like, playing at minor A level, is the place to be if you are to improve. And we spoke about it briefly last week about the under-16s going into the A Championship this year, and manager Paul Neenan being very, very happy with the performance and being on the threshold of making it through to a semi-final, or to a quarter-final. So you need to be playing at the highest level possible and maintain being playing there. These players, there's a lot of players in that Limerick team that have huge experience, and you must remember the Karen O'Learys and the Rebecca DeLees of this world. Not only did they win All Ireland under minors in 2014, they also won intermediate All Irelands that year. So they have been vastly experienced, and they have been part of the Limerick transition from intermediate camogie to senior camogie, and now is the time to step on. And I would say that realistically, Pat Ryan would be forced to admit that the 3 wins that they have got out of 5 was probably beyond his wildest dreams. And now the goalposts have changed again. Like, you're suddenly gone from, beating the rest of the best to wanting to take a big scalp. And certainly I think Saturday is an opportunity, but Jack, it will be difficult.
Yeah, it definitely will be difficult, but it's, as you said, it's another step into where Limerick Camogie wants to go. And just on that, the minors on Monday evening advanced to the Munster semi-final with a 3-9 to 2-10 win over Tipperary, and you're putting Tipperary into that Big 4. So Limerick Camogie is definitely going in the right direction.
It's going in the right direction. Like, if you take the seniors, decent league campaign, now into the Munster final, take the juniors, although I'm reluctant to go there over what happened in the Munster Championship. A decent league campaign, beaten by Kerry Intermediates, and we saw what Kerry Intermediates did to Cork last Saturday in the Junior Championship. Probably more or less a junior farce more than a junior championship, because in my view, a junior championship should be for junior teams. But we won't go there anymore, not be a 9-out heads. But that good performance in the minor championship, and a very, very good performance in the under 16. And also on last Saturday, Brian Madden's under 15 side had a very good win over Tipperary in the under 15 development league. So there's a lot of positivities around there. And just by the way, Jack, just to mention it as we're on, the girls are going to swap. They're going to swap their hurleys now for golf sticks in early August, and you'll get a chance for a hole in one, Jack, if you go along. They're holding a fundraising golf classic on the 6th and 7th of August in a Dare manner, and it with all the good work that's been done, it is certainly worthy of support. So, Jack, get the golf clubs oiled up and head out for the Dare manner that day.
Yeah, if anyone has a pair of left-handed golf clubs, I'd really appreciate it. I don't have any of my own, but I definitely go out and support. But that's further down the line. We obviously have the Munster Senior Championship Camogie final.
Take good goalkeepers, Hurley, Jack.
I got a new one, yes. I know goalie Hurley. So watch out this Sunday at 12 o'clock in the Skeeton pitch. Anyone to go out and see. And
Did you tell all
next edition, hopefully, okay, my first clean sheet at the weekend. Didn't face any shots, so it was kind of easy like that. But we didn't get the win, so again, that's beside the points. But we're getting distracted here now by my exploits or lack of exploits in goals.
Those backs are awful, letting those in top of you, Jack.
Well, no, my backs. I had no shots to face at the weekend. My backs were very good in front of me. Just unfortunate with the way things went. A lot of frees went against us, but look, that's down the line, and we will look forward to. We'll be talking about the club draw in just a few moments. There's a few bits to get through, but just on the Limerick Camogie team, they're playing Cork in the Munster Championship Camogie final on Saturday at 3:30 in the Rag. It has been changed from Saturday evening to 3:45, but it is at 3:30. Just if anyone is wanting to head to the game, if they're lucky enough to get a ticket, or if they want to watch it online. I'm not sure what streaming platform it'll be on, but I'm sure it will be streamed one way or another. That's it for Hurling.
I presume it'll be streamed by Munster Camogie, Jack.
Yeah, I'd imagine so. But I imagine it'll be streamed one way or another. But anyways, that's our games to look forward to for the weekend, and it'd be remiss of us to not look back on last weekend and Billy Lee's footballers, who it just seemed to have moved to another level. Like, you can look at the standard of opposition and just say it was just Waterford, but Waterford were going well in the league. They got the semi-final, lost to Antrim. But Limerick 4-18 to 12 points. Like, when was the last time you saw a Limerick football team score 4-18 in the championship, Matt?
I didn't.
Exactly.
Never. It was phenomenal, and just looking at the game, they were worthy of every score of it. They were like, few could argue with it. Now, Waterford were poor, you'd have to say, on the day. Waterford were very, very disappointing. I'm sure Shane Ronayne will be extremely disappointed with the way his side. They were actually outclassed, Jack. Outclassed and outperformed and whatever. But on a broader picture than just Limerick and Waterford, I think there has to be a worrying trend from the first weekend nationally. We saw the Mayo Sligo lopsided result. To a lesser extent, we saw Mayo, Donegal and Down, which we lopsided. We saw Clare taking a hammering from Kerry. You know, and no second chance. It's out. The sooner we get back, maybe to players having the second chance, or we having the second tier championship, the better, I would say. But that is not to detract or digress from 1 minute from what was a first class, historic in many ways, Limerick performance in the magnitude of the win. It was just a simply incredible win. And look, it's testament to the good work and the organisation and the hard graft that Billy Lee and his backroom team and the players have put in over the last couple of years. Limerick football has certainly been on an upward trajectory, consistently on an upward trajectory since the beginning of 2020. And all the question marks about it, when would it continue? When would it implode? When would it stop? All those questions have been answered, I think. But facing Cork on Saturday week it's going to be a new level. Like as we spoke about the Camogie team a while ago, taking a scalp of one of the big four. This is going to be a new level. It would be a fantastic Munster championship to win. Having beaten Waterford, possibly would have to face the big two to get out of it. Cork in the semi-final and possibly Kerry in the final. Although Kerry will probably travel very cautiously to Thurles to play Tipperary in the Munster semi-final. But it needs moving to another level. Like Limerick football moved from Division 4 to Division 3 and adapted quite well there in the last number of weeks. Now the next stage is to get to that Munster final. We're so tantalizingly close to it last year. Then home advantage, not that home advantage means that much when there aren't crowds about. But certainly the lads will know every blade of grass in the Gaelic grounds, and it must be some bit of an advantage. But I know you'll be talking at greater length next week. But fantastic achievement by Limerick. Score 4 goals in the championship anytime, Jack, is fantastic. But to tack on 18 points with it, I thought it was a very, very competent performance. And we were talking here last week when we were previewing the game about the potency of the Limerick full forward line, and I think that was borne out for anyone that was watching last Saturday.
Yeah, and one thing just strikes me from Limerick, and it's currently a broader thing in football these days, is just the brand of football that Limerick and other counties are employing now. There's really no caution in their play. Some people will still get frustrated by over and back passing, but that's needed to create space. But Limerick are a very exciting team to watch these days, aren't they, Matt?
Absolutely, because we have some very exciting forwards, and particularly in the full forward line, and we saw your clubmate with a couple of steering runs, and not runs but absolute sprints or bolts, if you like. And they're very, very exciting, and are able to pick up, well able to pick off the scores. And you see the way they carved out the goals, Jack. Very, very hard to defend against that type of creativity. And now I know Cork will be a different level, and it may not be as easy, but certainly Cork have an awful lot to be thinking about for the next 10 days.
Yeah, and Cork too have a lot to thinking about. And we won't get too much into the game because that's for next weekend. But it was a third successive year of a Munster Championship victory for Limerick. That's the first time that's happened in nearly 30 years. And in 2019, we played Cork in a semi-final and got hockey. I think it was 3-18 to 6 points. The semi-final will be a real indication of where Limerick actually are at.
It will be. It will be a barometer. Like as I said, we've made the transition from Division 4 to Division 3, came tantalisingly close, if you like, Jack, to making it to Division 2. You got a playoff for promotion. Now, we're following in Cork's heels in that regard, in that Cork had just vacated their place in Division 3 this year because they got promoted at the end of last year. So, but having said that, when it comes to the elite in football and you're talking about the top 6 or 7 teams, Cork will always be in it. And what a win over one of those teams would do for Limerick football. But Limerick football now is in the position, and they have worked themselves into the position that has to be the next step. It has to be the next step. Like, as I said, came tantalisingly close to a Munster final last year. Really to get, they really need to get to a Munster final this time. So, and in doing so, beat one of the big 2 in Munster or beat one of the big 6 in the country.
Yeah, and just even talking about the progression of Limerick football, the under-20s are actually out in action next Thursday evening, and I'm sure when next week's podcast is going to come out. So just for anyone, it's the 8th of July in Semple Stadium at 7:30. They play Tipperary. Limerick, like their senior counterparts, are going for a 3rd successive year of a Munster Championship victory. They beat Tip by 1 point in the last 2 years. Like Tip have really been growing, or have been growing for the last decade or so at underage level. But for Limerick to get a 3rd consecutive victory over Tipperary at that level, and we spoke about the minor hurling, would be another, I suppose, indication again, for want of a better word, to see where Limerick football are at with returns.
Another milestone.
Academy as well.
Because if you reflect back on last year, they beat Tipperary in the first round, and gave Kerry one hell of a fight in McNeville Park. Had their shooting been a bit more on cue on the night, they could have come very, very close to an upset. And we saw the way Kerry went on to win the Munster Championship. So, yes, you're right. And a 3rd victory in the under-20 and in a 3rd victory in 3 years in the championship would certainly be landmark and certainly would represent progress. And it will be very, very interesting. I know we'll be talking about it next week. We've seen a panel. There's quite a few there with experience from last year. It looks to be a decent panel. So, yeah, I would hold a good hope of beating Tipperary on Thursday week. But as I said, that's for next week.
Yeah, and onwards and up for Limerick football. I suppose before we finish today, Matt, on Tuesday evening, we had the draw for the club championships for 2021. Just a quick note on it, it was exceptionally well done, production value. Liam Hearn hosted it with James McGilligan. Very well, first of all, very well done, Matt. It was very easy to watch. It was like watching television, essentially. Yeah,
congratulations to everybody. It was excellently done, and it sort of unveiled the mystique that's all about the draws and all this sort of a thing. Draws taking place at conventions and passing around the bucket, and Johnny and Billy and Biddy and they all picking out their team, picking out teams. It was very, very, very professionally done, and it has thrown up a mouth-watering program for the club championships when they start in August. And I've noticed, but I haven't it opened yet. Just actually before we came on air, that the master fixture list for the championships has dropped into my mailbox. So that will make very, very interesting reading. Now, there are some very, very interesting draws in the championship. It'll be very, very interesting, Jack, to see. Like we've mentioned this a couple of podcasts back about the same 4 teams qualifying in the senior hurling championship for the semi-finals for the last 3 or 4 years, is it?
4, I think, at this stage.
Or I think
It's
at
not
this
tight.
stage. Yeah. And it'll be very, very interesting to see if there will be a breakthrough on that, or if there will be a change on that. Now, like, you take Group 1 there, and I know you don't have time today to dwell on it, but the Piercy, Kilmallock, Ballybrown. Like we were saying a couple of weeks ago, if you recall, that we thought that Ballybrown may be best place to be one of to be a team that would break into that top 4. It certainly isn't an easy draw for them. Piercy and Kilmallock, all hands at winning the championship. The other group, Patrick's Well, Doon and Ahan. Can Ahan break the Doon and Patrick's Well? Good question. So very, 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 very interesting. In Group B, then of course you've South Liberties, Blackrock, and Garrispillane, in section B, and then you have Monaleen, isn't it? Maru Bohar, and the third one escapes me actually. No, sorry, Maru Bohar.
I'll just get it here. I'll get it here for in Group Dermot Lean, Kildimo, Peliskinry.
Yeah, that'll be a very interesting one now. That'll be a very interesting group with one to come out of it, because it contains Adair, who were relegated from Section A, and it contains Kildimo, Peliskinry, who are going up. So that will be a very, very interesting group, and again, it will be hard to call it, but I even at this remove, and we're not into the game of predicting outcomes at the moment, Jack, in the Limerick Championship, because we'll have enough of that later on. But I at this remove, Adair must be favourites there, but anything can happen. Move to the senior football, and there's a very juicy Group 1 in the senior football, Jack. It contains Galtee Gales, St. Kieran's, and a team called Ballysteen, which you would know a bit about.
A bit.
Very interesting. Kieran's and Galtee Gales, of course, were involved in the relegation scrap last year. They met in the semi-final in Kilmallock. St. Kieran's just got there, and the Gales subsequently sent Broadford through the relegation trapdoor. Group 2, you've Ula and the Piercy pitted in with Adair. Group 3, Ballylanders with newcomers Clahan and Monaleen. And Group 4, we have Galway, Newcastle West, and Father Casey's.
Yeah, this Group 4 was the one that stuck out for me anyway. Just seems like very tough games. Like all the teams are very talented and very skillful, but I can imagine the hits that are going to go in for them games.
Yeah, that is going to be hugely interesting now. Galway and Newcastle West met in 2 years ago in the championship. There wasn't a kick of a ball in it, and it was at a time when Galway were going particularly poor, but then they nearly pulled it. That'll be a clash of black and whites of Newcastle West and Galway, and of course, what's to be said about the clash of Newcastle West and Father Casey's? That is probably the standout fixture of the championship and the group stages.
There's so many standout fixtures, and even when you go lower in the ranks in the hurling, I know for our sake, for Askeaton now, we got a fine draw there with Patchwell, Mungret, Doon, Fina, and Monaleen. But look, at the end of the day, it's great. It's great
Jack,
to be at these games.
Now, without cutting across you, Jack, I think you've got to declare your interest now on that one, in that you're the Askeaton goalkeeper.
And for the time being, I have a Hurley. A goalkeeper Hurley, just gripped and ready to go. But there's a long summer left there. If anyone around the parish is putting their hand up for that spot, I'm sure they're going to face little trouble in taking it off me. But for the time being, I have 2 games played inside there now. It's been enjoyable, to say the least. in the sunshine on Sunday morning now, back in Cool Kappa. It was difficult enough conditions, but in the hard ground as well. But it's been enjoyable. It's a tough group for us. But look, as I said, it's great for every single team.
You have the second Patrick Swell, who were beaten in the county final. You have Mungret St. Paul's, Doon. You have Fianna Kilmeady, and you have Monaleen. But Jack, it's a group you can come out of.
Well, look, it's the same for every team. It's a new year. It's 2021. It's a year I don't know, some people thought they might never get to. So every team across all the divisions has an equal chance. There's been some great draws made. Huge credit again to Limerick J, and I think we might finish this match. Just that they've nearly every competition for 2020 run off at this stage, where a lot of counties didn't get that done. They have their draw set for 2021 early. Teams have 8 or 9 weeks to prepare for that. Like, it's huge credit to Limerick J, everyone involved behind the scenes to get this done, to get the teams into the pots. A very professional setup, and to give teams that notice in a time when we're getting very little notice for anything.
Yeah, I think it's excellent. We spoke about what they got into the condensed 11 weeks last year, and you know, had they got another 2 weeks, there would have been no carryover whatsoever to this year. But you can also throw into the mix, Jack, that they came up with a very, very ambitious league program there a couple of weeks ago, and are nearly down to the finals. We're into the concluding stages, and what amazes me with such a proliferation of games and clubs being involved in hurling, being involved in football 2 and 3 nights a week, that there has been such buy-in by the clubs to the competitions. There's so many games that have been played on.
We're after losing Matt at one of the most crucial times of the podcast, but I suppose he is right in saying that a lot of teams have been put not under pressure, but there's been a lot of games for teams to get through. If you're playing both codes, you could have 4 or 5 games a week, depending on if you're playing A's and B's, and every team, as he said, has bought into it. I know from my own side of it, there's been plenty of people going training every night of the week. It's great to get out and see our mates. I'll add Matt back in; he's just in the waiting room. But yeah, it's been a brilliant few months, and long may it continue. Matt probably has more to say that there.
What I was saying there before the gremlins of the estuary creeped in and interrupted us, Jack, was that the buy-in from the clubs has been fantastic, and with the vast majority of games played on schedule, we've been arguing about this and about the leagues and the stop-start nature of the leagues in the past. They have been run very, very, very efficiently. There has been buy-in from the clubs, and I've no doubt that the clubs will benefit from it, from getting the games. And we're now down to the concluding stages practically. I think another week or two we'll see the divisional elements out of it, and then I think, am I right in saying we move on to a county element at that stage?
Yeah, I'm unsure. To answer, I'd say it probably depends on how far Limerick are going in championships. I don't know if they've gone that far, but we'll take the divisional aspect of it while we can, and hopefully they'll be county league, because there will be a break there, I'd imagine, between the hurling and football, with Limerick going so well in both. But that remains to be seen.
It doesn't. Limerick involvement doesn't impact in the leagues, because that's what the leagues are all about. Is to give players a chance, I think there's a county element to it at the concluding stages. First of all, they're going to be played out. What people seem to forget is, all right, you take the West Intermediate League. That's the West Intermediate League and Championship. It's a double thing, and it gets played out at the divisional level to a final, where it is a championship. But I have a suspicion that the winners go to a county league semi-final.
Yeah, I actually top whatever in any given group are sent through to a county aspect of it. We're just focused on getting every game played in a divisional sense. But I'm sure there's loads more fixtures this weekend. You can find it on the website. all the fixtures will be up for the weekend. Usually in the midweek to be results fixtures, because and you're doing it as well, Matt. I've seen on your Facebook and Twitter. There is so many games on every night of the week. Again, we encourage you to get out to your local J ground, or if you're looking to venture further afield, make sure you adhere to social distancing. But there's so many good games to look forward to on our website, on the Limerick J website. Matt is a wealth of knowledge. I'm sure he'd take a phone call if any of you any of the nights to tell you what games are on that evening. But from a county aspect anyway, this weekend, Matt, we have 3 huge games to look forward to. On Friday, the Minors All-Ireland semi-final against Galway. On Saturday, Munster Camogie final, Limerick versus Cork at 3:30 in the Rag. And then on Saturday evening at 7 o'clock, Limerick versus Cork, Munster Senior Hurling Championship semi-final. The bumper weekend of J action to look forward to, Matt. Thank you for running through with me. An hour and 5 is good going to get through all them things, the club draw and Limerick football. So again, many thanks to you, Matt, and we'll be in touch next week.
You're welcome, Jack.
The impression the game you get out with what you put into. It's like a walk of life. If you're good enough, go out and get it, no more about it.
But not so much control in the centre of the field from Kilkenny as Richie Bennett sends it high and over the bar.
Your mother sends you down to the shop for a pound's worth of goods and she gives you 50 pence. You can't get the pound's worth of goods, can you?
Just about kept in. Oh, well done, Johnny Buckley. To do that to Tomas O'Shea, he deserves to score from here. One of the highlights of the Sunday game.
Limerick went out there from the word court today. No more about it. They made all the running, that was it. Put the ball over the bar and the back of it, and that's it. No ifs, no buts.
Is there much time left? We have a couple of injuries. Here comes Kieran Carey. Carey leading the charge of the right brigade. 45 metres out. He's a chance to score. He's put it high. He's put it over.
There's no sympathy in this game for anybody.